All right, so it's just after 13 weeks. Last week I stopped feeding both my packages from the 14th, but I stopped feeding them for two different reasons. The other hive that's way over there, they were building out their super, building out comb, and they started to store a little bit of nectar, which was probably sugar water, in their super, so I didn't want that. Had to stop feeding them. They're doing great. And now they're bringing in nectar and filling that super with real honey, and that's what we want. This hive, however, was not building out the frames up in the super, but what they were doing was taking the sugar water down and just storing it and taking up all the room for the queen to lay. So it's a week later after we stopped feeding, and I knew I wanted to get in and look at this because we want to make sure she has room to lay, and it's a good thing we did. So they are building out. This is the super. We already found her. She's down in there, and we rearranged a few frames to make sure that she's not honey bound in the bottom. They're building out this super now and starting to work on it, but up top, these frames are totally filled with honey, and it's probably sugar water honey. There's no place for her to lay. So that one's totally full of honey. This one's totally full of honey, but look at this. This one's totally full of honey on this side. I don't know if you can zoom in. There's just an area right here that were open that she laid in. She is doing her best to find a place to lay, and she just doesn't have it. When Austin found her, she actually had an egg coming out of her butt, and she was looking for a place to put it and just dropped it off. Doesn't matter how many supers you put on, and in this situation, if they close in all her cells, she doesn't have room to lay. They're gonna think that's it. Their tree is not big enough, and they're gonna swarm. Brand new packages will swarm, and it's up to you. You're not gonna feed. You can't keep feeding all year round if this is what's happening. And in fact, beyond stopping feeding, I'm gonna take 4 frames of honey, and I'm actually gonna have to sacrifice, because there's brood on every frame, so I'm gonna have to sacrifice a couple frames that are like this, with I don't want to put more weight there. This one's the same way. I think I'll show you. Look at, she just laid here. Now she's in the bottom, but she was up here. There's just a tiny area of eggs that she laid, and that's all she can lay. There's no room. So it's our job to keep them from swarming and to provide her room, to spin these frames out. It's not good honey. You can use it to feed something else, or you can trash it, but it's not good for selling. You got to spin these out and put them right back in so she has empty cells. I have other frames from other hives already drawn out, so I can replace frames immediately. But if you don't have that, you have to have access to an extractor. That's part of beekeeping. You have to, we're all expecting to get honey, so you all have to be ready to have an extractor. So I'm going to pull 4 frames. I'm going to put in the middle of the top deep. I'm going to have 4 empty frames for her to lay in. We've rearranged a few things so that she's not honey bound in the bottom. So there's a path going up, and she's a good queen. There's just no room to lay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put this back together. Hopefully she keeps laying, and then hopefully they stop putting brood in those middle frames. And after they do that, they'll put honey right above it in this super. So yeah, make sure your queens have frames ahead of them to lay.